I still remember that morning like it happened yesterday. The sun had barely risen over the fields, painting everything in a soft golden light, and I stepped outside with a cup of coffee in my hand, ready to start my chores for the day. For me, mornings on the farm had always been sacred, quiet, steady, a rhythm I had inherited from my father and grandfather before him. But that peace was shattered the moment I laid eyes on it. A brand new Bentley, sleek, polished to perfection, sitting right across the sliding doors of my family's barn. It was parked in such a way that I couldn't open the door, couldn't get my tractor out, couldn't do the work I needed to keep the farm going. At first, I blinked and thought maybe I was imagining it. Nobody in their right mind would block someone's barn door, especially not in a neighborhood where people were supposed to be considerate and neighborly. But when I saw her stepping out of the driver's seat, high heels clicking against the gravel, oversized sunglasses covering half her face, and her little white dog cradled in her arms like a baby, I knew exactly what had happened. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't thoughtless. It was deliberate. It was Karen, the HOA president, the woman everyone whispered about, the woman who had made it her mission since the day she moved in to remind me I didn't belong here. Karen was the kind of person who believed money bought her power, and power gave her the right to treat people however she pleased. From the moment she arrived in the neighborhood, she had hated me. She hated my old red barn, hated the sound of my tractor, hated that the smell of hay sometimes drifted into her perfectly manicured backyard. She hated everything about the life I lived. Even though my family had been on that land for over 50 years, long before the HOA was even formed, long before the cookie-cutter houses popped up around me. She saw me as a blemish on her carefully curated world, an outsider she could control with her endless rules and complaints. And now, she was showing me just how far she was willing to go. When I approached her and asked calmly, "Mom, I need you to move your car. I've got work to do," she didn't even bother looking at me. She adjusted her sunglasses, lifted her chin, and said, "This neighborhood has standards. Maybe it's time someone taught you how to live by them. That barn is an eyesore, and until you do something about it, maybe I'll just leave my car here." The words dripped with arrogance, each syllable a reminder that in her eyes I was beneath her. I clenched my jaw and walked away, trying to swallow the anger that burned inside me. My father had always taught me to rise above pettiness, to carry myself with dignity no matter what. He had fought for this farm through storms, debt, and long nights of backbreaking work, and he always said, "Son, never let anyone make you small, but never let anger own you either." Those words echoed in my head as I watched that shiny Bentley glinting in the sun, blocking my barn like a trophy. I told myself it wasn't worth it, that I'd let it go, that maybe it was a one-time thing. But I was wrong. Because it wasn't the last time, not even close. The very next week, there it was again. Same spot, same deliberate angle that made it impossible for me to swing the barn doors open. And the week after that again. Each time I walked over and asked politely. Each time she brushed me off with a smirk or some cutting remark about how I was lowering the neighborhood's value. I tried going through the proper channels. I filed complaints with the HOA, but since she was president, they went nowhere. I even called the police once, but they told me it was a civil matter, not something they could handle. The frustration ate away at me because here I was, standing on the land my family had nurtured for generations, yet I was being treated like a trespasser, like a nuisance in my own home. And every time I looked at that car, shining and flawless, parked with the smugness of its owner, I felt the weight of helplessness pressing down on me harder and harder. The challenges mounted quickly. Because I couldn't get my tractor out on time, I fell behind on mowing the fields, and weeds started creeping up higher than they should have. That only gave Karen more ammunition, and she began filing complaints against me, claiming my property was unkempt and didn't meet HOA standards. Imagine that. The woman blocking me from doing my work was turning around and accusing me of neglect. The irony stung like a fresh wound. On top of that, some of the neighbors who used to smile and wave began looking at me differently. I could hear the whispers, see the way they hesitated to get involved. Most of them were scared of crossing Karen, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. She had a way of making people feel powerless, of making them second-guess themselves, like maybe she really did run everything around here. But the hardest part wasn't the weeds or the whispers. It was the toll it took on me inside. I started lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with frustration. I thought about my father, about the promise I had made him to keep the farm alive, and I felt like I was failing. Here was this woman with her luxury cars and her designer clothes slowly chipping away at everything my family had built, and I couldn't stop her. I felt small, beaten down, like maybe she was right, that I didn't belong in this neighborhood anymore. The farm that had always been my refuge started to feel like a prison, with every sunrise bringing the dread of another fight, another obstacle, another reminder that I was at war with someone who refused to back down. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was a Saturday, the kind of day I usually devoted catching up on heavier chores. I had promised a neighbor I'd deliver hay to him, and I was already running late because I'd barely slept. When I walked outside, coffee still in my hand, my heart sank. There it was again, the Bentley, blocking the barn door like it had every right to be there. But this time, Karen was sitting on her porch with her dog, sipping from a wine glass even though the sun had barely cleared the horizon. When she saw me, she smiled, not kindly but cruelly, like she had been waiting for this moment. I walked up, my patience worn thin, and said firmly, "Move the car." Now, she tilted her head, took a slow sip and replied, "Or what? You going to write me another little complaint? Face it, you don't belong here. Maybe this will finally convince you to sell and leave." That was the moment something inside me snapped. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't throw insults back at her. Instead, I turned, walked into the barn through the side door, and climbed into my father's old green tractor. The moment I started the engine, the sound filled the barn like thunder rolling across the land. My hands were steady now, my heart beating with a strange kind of clarity. I eased the tractor forward until the heavy metal nose pressed against the back bumper of her precious car. Karen leapt to her feet, shrieking, "Don't you dare! That car is worth more than your entire life." But I didn't stop. I pressed the pedal, and the tractor surged forward, crushing the Bentley with a roar of metal against metal. The sound of glass shattering and alarms blaring echoed through the neighborhood. Karen's screams rose above it all, but I kept going until the path to my barn was clear. When I finally parked the tractor and climbed down, the silence was deafening. Neighbors had gathered at their windows, some gasping, some smiling quietly as if they had just witnessed something long overdue. I looked Karen in the eye, her face red with fury, her dog trembling in her arms, and I said calmly, "This farm was here before you, and it'll be here long after you're gone. You don't get to block me on my own land." For the first time, she had no comeback, no smirk, no cutting remark, just silence. Of course, there were consequences. She tried to sue me, dragging me through the legal system. But when the truth came out, about her repeated harassment, about the property lines, about the complaints I had filed, it didn't go the way she thought it would. The judge ruled against her, even ordering her to pay damages for harassment and trespassing. The irony was almost poetic. But what mattered more than the legal victory was the way I felt in that moment. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I felt like I had taken back my dignity, my pride, my family's legacy. Karen moved out within the year, her reputation shattered along with her Bentley, and peace slowly returned to the neighborhood. The barn still stands strong today, and every time I walk past it, I don't just see a building, I see resilience. I see a reminder that sometimes standing your ground means more than just enduring. Sometimes it means showing the world you refuse to be bullied, no matter how much money, power, or arrogance stands in your way. And that's the message I want you to take from this story. Never let anyone strip away your dignity or make you feel like you don't belong. Stand firm, stand tall. Because your worth isn't measured by the car you drive or the title you hold. It's measured by the strength in your heart and the courage to fight for what's right. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, have you ever faced someone who tried to bully you just because they thought they had more power? Share your experience, because your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Be Kind Always, where we share stories that inspire, empower, and remind us all that kindness is the greatest strength we carry. Because sometimes being kind means standing firm, looking injustice in the eye, and saying, "Enough is enough."